Mike Dean has some of the most unique and famous melodies and productions in all of hip hop. I'm going to show you the tips and secrets that you can use to get the same kind of sound in your productions without buying any kind of fancy live synths like this. Alright, this is just a MIDI keyboard, but you get the idea. I'm going to show you melody tricks like this, mixing strategies like this, how to arrange your track and add so much evolution, and some famous outros that Mike Dean is known for. A lot of Mike Dean's hits are around 100 BPM. I'm going to jump in at around 97 BPM, which is a good start. Now, if you pick the wrong scale, you're going to have issues before you even start making the melody. I'm going to pick F sharp minor. I mean, in FL Studio, if you go into View and you go into Scale Highlighting, you can select whichever scale you want to show up in the background just to make sure that you don't place an incorrect note. And Mike Dean has one of the craziest hardware collections in all of production. I don't have any of that yet, but I do have a set of very particular plugins, which makes it perfect to make melodies like these. I'm going to start with this one here. I've got some root notes like these. When you're making the root notes, you have to make sure that you get the right kind of vibe. A lot of people gloss over how important the bass line is. If you have a listen to songs like this by The Weeknd, which Mike Dean produced, listen to how much energy and emotion is in this bass line. Once you have your bass line, go and turn these into chords, and you can do this by placing notes above and below. This is a minor chord here, and you know that because there's 2 gaps between the first and second note, and then 3 gaps after that. And if you want to make a major chord, you just have to do the opposite by making this 3 gaps and then 2 gaps here. Now this is a perfect starter, but you can transform these melodies by adding supporting melodies up at the top like this. Something that makes real synths and real instruments sound so good is the modulation, because you're never going to be playing something perfectly every time. And you can get a similar kind of effect in VSTs. Here I've connected this LFO up to this part of the synth and also up to this filter here, and you can hear how it sounds quite a bit different. It almost sounds like it's breathing as the filter and the modulation move around. And just in case you wanted an even cooler sounding melody, I'm going to grab this preset here. I'm going to drag all of these up, and I'm going to right click and change this to smooth. I also added a flanger on top, and this is the kind of texture that you can get on your melodies. It's a really cool effect how it slows down at the end of the beat. I have this synth here. Turns out we need the MIDI keyboard after all. I apologize for throwing you. I'm going to record this melody here. This kind of melody adds so much energy to the track, and it's going to add so much evolution because we can bring this in later on in the beat. If you'll notice, Mike Dean often leaves so many awesome layers to bring in later. For example, in We Still Don't Trust You, he brings his synth in a lot later. I'm going to add a ton of reverb to this to make it sound really wide. I found this awesome synth here. I'm going to add a counter melody, which I think is going to sound so sick. And we can bring this in maybe halfway for a bit of a beat switch. And some awesome new setting that I've never used before. If you right click down here and add, it's something called Note Repeat. I'm going to select this one here. So it adds this repeat here. I'm going to do the same thing here, add double the repeat. So this is such an awesome trick. I think this sounds so unique. I'm going to grab these last 2 chords of the normal melody. I'm going to paste these just at the end. So this is the normal finish that we have, but I want to make this really special. So I'm going to go and select these chords and click Control A, which is going to open up an arpeggiator. And it adds this really cool finish. If we listen to the end of this song, we can hear the arpeggios that Mike Dean uses. We have this modulating synth here. And if you remember the bass from before, I went and copied that. onto this low pitch saw wave here. There's still going to be an 808 in here, but this is kind of another layer we can add over the top or swap out with the 808 to add evolution. Mike Dean never just makes an 8-bar loop and then copies it for the whole song. He's always bringing in and out different basses and different synths to keep things fresh, and I want to do the exact same thing for this track. I also have this Vox here. You can briefly hear a kind of vocal sounding synth in the background of this song. And I might be backing vocals that the engineer put in, but I'm gonna have this vocal in the background and kind of drown it out with reverb, and it will really blend in nicely. This is a one shot from the Producer Growth Kit, which I'll link in the description. It has over 3,000 royalty-free samples, MIDI, and one shots, so it's unbelievably overpowered. Now to make the drum beat, I'm gonna pick this fat 808 here. We have this clap sample, and this clap sample here. There's a lot of evolution with the claps, and it's awesome to have a crisp clap as well as a wide one, because you can bring them in and out and swap them. We have a crash, we have some hi-hats, we have a kick, and just some different percussion down here, as well as this transition sample, which is also going to add a lot of evolution to the track. When I'm making the drum beat, in a beat where I have so many different melody layers, I like to mute most of them and just listen to the main chords and maybe one counter melody when placing the drums. I have this bass line here, this 808, which is very, very similar to the bass line I created earlier. I also created this other version of the bass line, which has this kind of 808 feel in the background, which can be something cool to have come in later on in the track. You'll notice we have a cool kind of fill there just in this song. I quickly created this two-step hi-hat sequence and added some small variations to it. I have a couple of fills that come in, just like this fill hi-hat here and this one later on here. And what I did with them is I went and lowered the volume a lot so they really blend into the background. I also lowered the pitch of some hi-hats, which adds a lot of evolution to it. Mike Dean does this a lot in his tracks. You can listen to the pitch changing back and forward on the hi-hat here. We have this fairly simple kick sequence here. We have a kick coming in some kind of unorthodox different spots, but it just adds quite a bit of bounce to it. I'm going to lower the volume of some of the fill kicks, like this one here. I added this clap and snare sequence here, with some fills here with changing pitches. I also changed the pan so they're both going side to side. Make sure that all of these are in the mixer track. Some are already in there, but I'm going to grab the drums which aren't and do Control-Shift-L, which is going to add all of them to the mixer track. Now that we have everything in the mixer track, it's time to mix it. We really want everything to blend together perfectly. Mike Dean uses such amazing different synths and so many amazing sounds, but I feel like none of them stand out too much and overcrowd the mix, so it's perfect to have everything blending in together. I'm going to start by changing the stereo separation to 100% merged, which is mono, and that basically means the left and right ear hear the same thing. You can focus and hear what the levels are. So I'm going to go through each layer one by one and add some different effects. What I'm going to do to some of these layers is add an EQ and just cut some of the highs and lows off. What we're doing is we're cutting off a lot of these lower frequencies down here, which would normally clash with the bass. I added a bit of retro color just to this pad here. Without it, it sounds pretty good, but I feel like it adds so much to it, especially the wobble effect. So here we have all the melodies. It sounds good, but obviously there's so much going on and we're never going to have all these layers coming in together. And because of that, when I'm mixing the drums, I'm just going to turn on a few of these layers. I'm going to grab the main pads. I'm going to just turn on these two layers and then go through and bring the drums in. I turn the decay all the way down on the hi-hat. One thing I'm going to do with the hi-hat is just slightly cutting out some of the highs. A lot of Mike Dean's hi-hats really blend into the mix and don't have a lot of top end on them. One hi-hat I forgot to show is this one here. It's very quiet and blends in. But we can bring this in to add a lot of energy to the track without it really standing out. I think this beat sounds awesome, and if we go back to original stereo separation, I think think this is an amazing sounding beat. I'm gonna add Isotope Ozone 9, and I'm gonna go and turn the character down to slow. And I'm gonna go and lower the thresholds. Now this is where we can really use some magic. I'm gonna go and drag in this pattern. I'm gonna right click on it and do S, which is split by channel. And then we can select everything and drag all of them in here. And this is where a lot of producers will go and quickly make a verse and a hook and call it a day. But this is where Mike Dean goes and no doubt spends a lot of time going and adding evolution, adding some new layers, making some clips original clips and going and adding some tweaks to them. I'm gonna show you how Mike Dean arranges his tracks to get a really cool effect and to keep your listeners hooked. In songs like Double Fantasy, it's over 1 minute and 7 seconds before the bass comes in. And the drums finally come in almost 2 minutes into the track. So depending on the artist, the arrangement varies so much. I'm just gonna have a 16 bar intro. I'm gonna start with a bit of a simple melody here. I'm gonna lower these vocals down in this separate pattern. And I'm also gonna lower the octave of some of these higher notes here, just to keep it down to the lower pitch. I'm also gonna add this transition here, turn the volume down quite a bit. And this is something that's so awesome to include. I'm gonna copy this saw pattern here. I'm gonna go into a completely new pattern. I'm gonna paste it in here. I'm gonna make sure we just have this first note. So I'm actually gonna delete everything else and expand this first note. I'm also gonna add a note at the end, just so it doesn't automatically loop back to the start. I'm gonna open up an Edison. I'm gonna drag this into the playlist. I'm gonna reverse it, drag this trim up here. I'm gonna turn up the in, and we have this riser here, which is gonna rise straight into the saw. It in a bit later as well. So the arrangement I've gone for here, we have this 16 bar intro with a lot of evolution coming in as the intro goes along. We have a 16 bar verse and then an 8 bar hook. It's going to change so much depending on the song. And if you were going to send beats out to The Weeknd or Travis Scott or Kanye, for example, he will have an engineer who's going to go in and grab the stems and change the arrangement anyways. So make sure that you're sending them the stems. So I wouldn't overthink this. Now, as far as cool outros go, that's something that Mike Dean is really famous for. I'm going to make this synth unique, lower it an octave. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build chords around these last notes here. And if you go and listen to these chords, if they fit the kind of vibe that you're going for, go and add an arpeggiator and you can add a cool effect at the end like this. I'm going to duplicate this out again. I'm going to make it unique again. I'm going to go and copy this pad here and just go and paste it in here. Now I'm going to click Control A and turn this whole thing into an arpeggio. I'm going to automate the wet percentage of this flanger and I'm going to have it fade in as this kind of outro. What I'm also going to do is go and automate this EQ. I'm going to make sure it's off up until this section of the beat. I'm also going to grab this knob here and click Create Automation Clip. And I'm going to make it so that as this outro goes along, cutting off some of the highs of this melody. And just in case that wasn't cool enough for you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the master pitch. I'm going to create an automation clip and I'm going to make sure, you got to zoom right in to make sure that you get this right or it will mess up the whole beat. And then we're going to lower it down to around 25. I'm then going to go and create an automation clip for the master volume. Make sure that we place a point right at 80%, and then we're going to have a fade out here at the end. So this is what this outro sounds like, which I think sounds so awesome. Ready to take all the layers out. You'll hear a similar effect to this happen in Out of Time by The Weeknd. Down here where the pitch suddenly gets lower. This is definitely the longest that I've spent on a beat in a while. It was 2.5 hours. So I hope you learned a lot from this Mike Dean tutorial. If you want to learn more about the secrets behind different producers and their production strategies, click one of the recommended videos. Click the link in the description to get either the Producer Growth Kit and or the Emotional Essence library for over 80% off, which in total have over 10,000 royalty-free samples and MIDI that I used to make this track.